episode 108, and pretty excited about this. And I think Kyle and I've like literally been talking about this for a year, trying to get this set up. So finally worked out.
That might be more on me than you. So I apologize.
I'm going to put the blame on you.
Here we are.
You can't say it was me for following up. I did my job. But yeah, just another exciting episode for you guys today. Kyle's a stud. He owns NorthWing Digital Marketing. Been working with him for, I don't know, got to be 2 years now at this point.
Got to be 2 years, 2+. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been awesome. And, we'll get into the discussions about marketing and stuff like that. But I've worked with a lot of marketing companies. I told you this. I'm very open, honest, transparent about marketing companies. And I've had some really bad stories, just like a lot of listeners have. Heard many, many stories. But I told you guys this. Again, I open with you. Like, it's been by far the best marketing company I've ever worked for. I'm not just saying that just to blow smoke up your ass, because I wouldn't do that. But it's just been a very, very overall, very good experience. So I appreciate you, Kyle.
I appreciate you too. And you've been, I appreciate that. And just to kind of put it back in your court a little bit, you guys have been an awesome client, an awesome partner. I always say, like, what we do is a co-produced outcome, right? So it's a lot of times depends on us and the client. You guys have been phenomenal to work with too. But I take that to heart and appreciate it.
Yeah. So yeah, why don't you, Kyle, I always start out with this question. If you and I, sophomore, junior in high school, who is Kyle Scott in high school?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that publicly before.
Yeah,
I was kind of like, I've changed a lot since then. I always, we all do. Yeah. I was not a sports kid whatsoever. This is a kind of a little known fact about me, but I was a big time skateboarder. That was my passion. I was also kind of a nerd as well.
Were you competitive at skateboarding?
Not really. Like, skateboarding's gotten a lot more competitive since then with like street league, these things. But back then it was kind of like, I don't know, like commercialized skateboarding was not cool. It was more like a small group individual sport back then, which is something that I really enjoyed. And I loved how much you had to dedicate to it and push through adversity to learn a new thing. Right. And I just loved how like individually driven you had to be to succeed in it. And I was never that great. But I was as good as I could be for my natural ability. I think that's like anything where natural ability and effort kind of coincide. But I loved it. And, since then I don't skateboard anymore. Age is a very difficult factor when it comes to that. But that was kind of my passion back then. And then I was also, I was pretty dedicated in school. That kind of fell off a little bit in college once I started working in digital marketing and focusing more on work, but I was pretty academic as well. So I was like a weird blend of like skater kid and nerd. I don't know. Maybe that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I've said this on the podcast too. I was kind of like, I was like the jock on one side, but then I was like in corral on the other side. So I was like kind of in the middle. So kind of a weird situation like that too. And then, so you graduate high school and you said you did go off to college?
I did. Yeah. So I was actually, it gets a little bit into my background, but at the time and throughout high school, from when I was really young until middle of college, my dad actually owns a construction company. So I always say I'm from the age of 11 till 21, I worked really out in the field in construction with him and with his crew, which is kind of a roundabout story into how I got into what I was doing, because marketing was one of my responsibilities back when, I always kind of joke, like, I was the kid who was nipping at my dad's heels. Like, you have to get a website before construction companies really had websites. And he would always tell me like, oh, I don't know if that's really going to matter, whatever. Then one day he came to me and said, we need to get a website. So that was kind of my transition from working more in a construction capacity with him to building his first website and GoDaddy website builder all those years ago. And then I actually called an agency while I was in college and working for my dad to help us, and ended up going and working at that agency about halfway through college.
That's awesome. What did you go to college for?
I designed my own degree. It was in the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota. And it's kind of funny, like when I think about it, it was actually kind of a digital marketing degree before there were digital marketing degrees, but it was basically like a fusion of business, marketing, and communications. So I was able to pull all the pieces together to really study what I wanted to. The story behind the story with that is I really primarily did that so I could stack all my classes Tuesdays and Thursdays from like 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then I could work at the agency I was working at Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Gotcha. So dad's an entrepreneur. What did mom do?
She's a real estate agent. So she has a real estate practice with a business partner. And
both parents are entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And it's cool. My mom kind of learned that in the middle of life. She was a hairdresser for the first half of her career and then made a big career shift into real estate, which is something she always wanted to do. But it's kind of funny. I mean, even in the hairdresser life, that's entrepreneurial as well. Like you build your own client book. Like it's funny. I think she learned a lot from that to transfer over to real estate. But yeah, entrepreneurialism was always in my blood. And I kind of always knew I would own my own business. I just didn't know exactly what form it would take. And here we are.
Did your dad or parents want you to go to college or just something you wanted to do?
They did. So neither of them went to college. So I think it was a big point for them and it kind of a point of personal satisfaction for them to, neither of them had gone to college to build a situation where I could go to college as like a first generation college student, which was cool. So I'm super thankful to them for that. And I think it did help in ways for sure. I do think I was already looking past college the day I started. So it was a little bit of a grind, but I'm glad I did it.
Growing up, did you see yourself working in your dad's business forever? Or was he like, no, you're going to go do something better?
No, we had always taught, that was kind of the plan for a while. And something I always saw as a potential. But it was kind of a slow phase out of that plan once I started working for an agency that, was essentially one of the early agencies that does a lot of what we do now. And I fell in love with it so much that it was like clearly what was going to happen at that point.
Yeah. So you're making your dad's website, you call this marketing agency. And then how does that transition happen where you go and work for them?
Yeah. God, it's funny. I'm thinking back to all this stuff now. You ever blink and look at where you are? You're like, how the hell did I get here? And then you have to put the pieces back together. So I actually called them for an internship. I had called the owner and just asked, is there anything I can do to, working full time and going to college, of course. I'm like, what else can I do? So I called and to ask if there was some additional I could do, and ended up splitting my time then between working with my dad and working for them, and then eventually transitioned over to basically working 40 hours a week for them and going to school. So I just picked up the phone, and I always say this, we have a gal that works here now, actually a couple people, they just picked up the phone and called me. And I don't think people understand that doesn't happen to business owners as often as people think. If you just pick up the phone and call the owner or someone high ranking and make a personal connection with them, your odds skyrocket of having an opportunity, which I'm sure you see on your side too. So yeah, I just called him. I was just a kid with, no fear, no shame, maybe, that just picked up the phone and decided to make a phone call. And here we are.
Yeah, or just didn't know any better. Screw it, I'm just going to call this guy. Yeah, that's awesome. And then how long do you stay there for?
3 years.
Oh, you're there for
3.5 years. Yeah.
And is that when you decided to go do your own thing, or is there a transition from there?
There was a transition. I had always kind of known that I wanted to do my own thing, and I'm super thankful for my experience there. I think we just got to a point where it just became clear, I always wanted to build my own entity. So it just became time to do that. But everything was, copacetic on that side. It was all good. We helped grow that company a lot, and it was just something that I always kind of wanted to do on my own as well.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard about Gorilla Desk yet, it's a super sick software. It's actually made by one of my really close friends, Chris Mareshi. So Chris built Gorilla Desk to help streamline his own personal business over 10 years ago. But now Gorilla Desk is used by over 4,000 companies. And today it's become one of the most premier platforms in our industry. So what's really unique about Gorilla Desk is that it's a simple all-in-one solution that's really easy for your team to use. Gorilla Desk offers a seamless onboard experience and best-in-class support with no additional cost. It's all included in your subscription. Inside the software, you'll find a whole suite of features, scheduling, invoicing, routing, and sales pipelines, integrated VoIP, text messaging, and pretty much all the automation you're going to need, and much, much more. So if you guys are still relying on paper or spreadsheets or fighting with an old software, I highly recommend that you guys check out Gorilla Desk. So we have a link in our description. Click on that, and it'll take you right to their free trial. Now let's get back to the show. And obviously you enjoy marketing, but have you always enjoyed marketing?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I still remember, I don't know, I guess early on, I didn't even necessarily know what marketing was, right? Like it was a task, like, hey, build this website, let's get the phone to ring, But that was where I really started feeling energized. I was probably like one of the world's worst field construction workers. Like I just, it was not I could do it, but, doing the same task for 8 hours straight, like my mind just goes crazy.
It's a grind.
It's a grind. Yeah. And I have huge respect for everyone in the industries. I mean, I own real estate now. I manage a lot of construction. I'm still somewhat involved in that side of things. And I love those guys. I have huge respect for, everyone in that field because I know how hard it is. Right. But where I got my energy, like after a full day of working, when I was building that website, I would stay up till midnight every single night.
Grinding away. Sure. Yeah.
Just grinding. Awesome. Yeah. And that's where I found like, hey, this is what I love, like this is what I'm like passionate about. That's
really cool. So then how do you decide to go out on your own? What year was that? How was like the first year?
Oh, wild. Yeah, it was 2016, late 2016. So I'd really call 2017 the first year.
And at this point, there's like no niches. Like you just like sell whatever I can, build whatever I can.
Take whatever dollar comes in the door, I still remember some of those first clients. It was just, it was like clients for a time, but just a crazy time. But, I think the first year, I kind of miss it, honestly, because I think people like you and me, we like building, we like the open road, the horizon, kind of the chaos a little bit, if we're being honest.
For sure. The new stuff every single day, trying to figure out all the problems. I agree.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, it was a grind. It was hard. But, I think for anyone listening who's thinking about taking that step, like you have to just make peace with the fact that the first year or two is going to be absolute chaos. You're going to be scraping every dollar together. It's not going to be the comfortable life that you're used to. But you got to just accept it because you're building towards something in the future. Right. But I'm sure you remember those days too.
Oh, absolutely. And like my mentor always said, it takes 5 years to build anything good. So it's going to be a grind. A lot of people that listen to this already know this. I don't need to repeat it, but there's probably listeners that don't, maybe they're technicians or maybe they're thinking about starting a business, and it's hard. Like even I have some of my own guys like that are listening, like that have just opened a branch last year. Like it's hard. And I always tell them, you got to work 5 years as hard as you can, put in all the effort. It'll change the next 50 years of your life. But most people aren't willing to do it. Most people aren't willing to give up 5 years at, let's just go with zero pay. Because most of you guys that are listening know what those first 5 years, like there's people in the company making more than you do. That's just part of the game. But most people aren't willing to do that. So if I say, hey, Kyle, let's go with the majority of people. Hey, I'll guarantee you $1 million. I think Alex Ramosi said this. I'll give you $1 million. And I was like, okay, cool. But the caveat is you have to work the next 5 years, 60 hours a week for free. And they're like, well, no, I can't do that. That's exactly what this is like.
That's really what it is. Yeah. I always find it funny. Like, I don't know if people are serious when they say it, but they say like, I would do anything for $1 million, What's anything?
Their anything and our anything is a little bit different.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
We're like sleeping on couches at the freaking garage overnight just to make sure that our shit's getting done,
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. I remember too, like the moments that test you, like the adversity you have to push through. I still remember like sitting in my vehicle. I had just gotten to like what I felt like was an awesome number for where I was at. It was $12,000 a month in recurring revenue. And I was like, I can hire someone part-time and make I just got to the point where I can make a full-time living, and kind of scratch this thing together and start building. And there was it always happens in waves. There was one day I lost $5,000 a month. And it wasn't one $5,000 a month client. It was four that just one company got sold. One company hired someone and brought it in-house. It was just a series of unfortunate events, I guess you'd say. But in one 2-hour period, I lost 40% of what I had built that I thought was,
Yeah. And it's funny because even people that I, guys come up that I mentor, this is the ebbs and flows of business. And it's funny, as soon as you lose a big client, you gain another one back. And it's funny, some of those big clients that you lose, I always say they always come back, and they do. They
always come back.
Yeah. So it's just funny, even though we're in different industries, but it's still business, So it's funny that the correlation between the two, in every business.
100%. And I think learning to roll with the punches like that, a lot of, I could feel it. I was close to being that's it. This is too much. I can't handle these swings.
Why didn't you quit?
I just looked up and just said, this is not going to stop me. There's more out there. You just got to push. And I think once you make that decision when the stakes are high, you'll always make it. That first time where you're faced with that decision is the time that determines whether you're going to keep pushing or you're going to pull back. And so I would just encourage anyone that if you're early on and you're facing a situation like that the way you react to that is, I believe, going to repeat itself in the future. And if you make the right call there, it just hardens you and nothing can shake you.
Yeah. And I always say this too. Okay, let's go worst case scenario. Let's go. Okay, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen? Okay, they take your business away. You don't have any money. They take your vehicle away. They're not going to take it away right away. You got a couple of months to start paying the big. What's the worst case scenario? What's the worst? You're still going to be alive. You're still going to learn some stuff, So what's the worst absolute outcome? There really isn't one. So fuck it. Let's go.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Nothing to lose. Because where the worst place you can end up is where you started, but 10 times more, 100 times more, probably, Yeah.
It's I sold the first company in 2021 and then started back over from scratch. And we went 100 times faster because we've already been there and done it, They could take it all away, but they can't take away what's up here yet. Maybe at some point. It's not yet, though.
It's funny you had the opportunity to do that because I always think about that. If I had to start completely over now, what would my approach be? I think it's a good mental exercise to run through.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. But I kind of, again, COVID happened. It forced me to change. We were doing lawn care at the time, so removal, blah, 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 blah. And COVID forced me to change because we could do pest control. Not necessarily here, but in Wisconsin we could. And we only had a couple hundred clients, and it kind of forced me. But going back to early days of mowing lawns, I remember the pest control company at my aunt and uncle's house, and they're still in business today. And I saw what they did. It took me a half hour, maybe it was 45 minutes, whatever it was, to cut my dad's lawn. And he paid me $20. That made him pay me. And they came there, they sprayed the house. They're gone in 10 minutes and grabbed the bills $150. I'm shit. I got to do that. So that little thing, little moment in time in my life planted the seed for that day to come, because eventually that's the way I was headed. First it was mowing, all that stuff, and then got into fertilization weed control. That took off. And that evolved into pest control. And then next thing you know, you and I are on a fucking phone call for an hour trying to figure out if we should rebrand or not.
Yeah. Which I think we made the right call on that. It was a big step, but that's one of the things I respect about you is you're willing to take the big move when it has to be taken, And even I was
you told me not. You're he's I don't think you should do this. And I was but Jake, all right. I was but Scott or Kyle. I'm looking at the name, but Kyle, I was okay, I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from. Everything on Google, everything looks great. Performance-wise, we're all looking good. But I said, I don't know if you remember this, what if I called Miss Jones across the street and said, hey, Miss Jones, our name's Turf Badger. What do we do? And you're oh, shit. Good point. So organically, are we really missing out? And I will say this. we've gotten more calls, and it has to do with a lot of things, but we've got more calls from commercial properties this year than ever before. And I honestly think because a lot of it's the name change. Now, if they picked up the phone, they saw Turf Badger, like, but now that it says Pest Badger, like, I honestly feel, and I can't prove it, but feeling, I was like, I really think it made a shift.
I think so too. That makes sense on the commercial side, because what they're probably thinking when they see turf is like, even if they do pest control for the scale that we need it done at, can they really do it? Yeah. So that totally makes sense. I'm glad that we made the shift when we did.
But how many times did you and I talk about it on the phone?
Well, the stakes are high. I mean, the stakes are really high when you do something like that. But I should have taken my own advice initially at the time. And what I always tell people is like, if you're considering a rebrand and you know you have to do it, every day that passes, it gets harder and more expensive.
And you actually said that on a call too. Like, if you're going to do it, this is when you should do it.
Yeah, the time is always now. If you know you're going to do it, today is the easiest.
And then we just went all in, and it wasn't easy. Like, it was a lot of work, which you and I both know, pulling it all off. But ultimately, it ended up really, really well. So let's circle back a little bit. So you launched first business or two, no niches. Take us from there on forward.
Yeah, I would say it was a grind early on, even when I hired my first couple employees. So I always knew like the first person I needed was more of just a marketing generalist, right? To just kind of be able to do a little bit of everything. And thankfully, I found a really good person who sat in that role for nearly 4 years. She's now moved on to a different role, and we're super happy for her, but it was a perfect fit for the time. And we were still kind of in take anything we could mode, because I hired her in 2019, and I hired Pete, who in November of
We're not related
2019 either. As well. No, a lot of Olsons around these parts, but and then COVID happened. So I was like, I have 2 employees I can barely afford. Massive global curveball. So we really shifted to like maintain the current business at that point, right? We still weren't really niched down. We had a little bit of everything, but a lot in local service. And I'm actually really glad we had such a large portfolio of local service companies when that happened, because they just exploded. It was like a 2-week hold your breath period, and then, oh my God, everyone's busier than they've ever been.
Yeah, I talked to quite a few people in the last month and a half in the marketing space, and they all kind of said the same thing. Like 2020 was just a weird time. And so when people were, I mean, weird for everyone, but marketing companies especially, because the first places people cut in their business at that time, during something like that, like a Black Swan event, it's going to be the marketing spend. So like, I know a lot of my friends that own marketing companies, like they all just like lost, maybe not all or half, but a lot of their clients during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't, thankfully. I tie it back to, I think, one of the main things we did, like, I think what really sets a company apart is when something like that happens, are they willing to step up and really be a partner for you? Or do they just go snap to vendor relationship, maintain the revenue? So we sat one day when it all said in, Pete, Kari, and I, and called every single one of our clients and said, if you stay on a retainer, which we believe you should, because you still need to market, this is not going to be forever, we will do any like COVID specific web updates for free. So if you need a banner saying our COVID protocol, if you need to change your hours, if you need to add something about how you're approaching this, like we'll just take care of that. And it was difficult thing for us to afford on paper at the time, but it like showed that solidarity where people stuck around. They knew we were in it with them. Had we not done that, I think it would have been a different story. I think it would have been a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And I know you do other services, but why did you pick the service industry specifically, or how did it fall into your lap? What happened?
Well, I think part of it tied to my background, right? It's what I knew. And it's no secret in the digital world that there's a plethora of local service business out there to be had. Frankly, I think a lot of companies don't treat the local service companies the way they necessarily should. And it's something that I have a huge heart and a passion for. So it's just always been a part of what we've done. And I've always been able to speak to it and educate our staff on how to approach it because it's how I got my start. It's just time-wise what I have the most experience with. Now, we branched out into others as well. We do a lot of work in the legal space for law firms, single attorneys, which is very similar in approach to.
How did you fall into that one?
I don't remember our entry point into that realm, but it's something that there's a lot of crossover skills, lead generation. It's actually, if you strip away the industry and the copy and things, the approach is very similar. I probably did trade out some work with an attorney early on. I wouldn't doubt it.
How's your office remodel coming along?
Good, really good. We actually are expanding faster than we thought. So I bought our building early 2023. God, time flies. It's hard to even remember the years. Did a really comprehensive remodel.
It looks sweet.
It's a 100-year-old building. And yeah, I appreciate that. It was a lot of work. Holy cow. And then we had 3 tenants encompassing half of the building. And actually gave 2 of them their notice for January 1st. One's already moved out. So we're building all that out too. So I don't know if you ever feel this, but it seems like things out when you're doing the right things, stuff always happens faster than you expect it to, where it's like, you might as well just throw the pass 30 yards longer than you're thinking you want to, lead the target a little bit. But we're super blessed and excited to be expanding even further. So
yeah, are you having someone else?
I've been enmeshed in a lot of concern. No, we're taking it over.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, we're taking it over. Yeah.
Because I know for a minute there, you guys were working remotely too, just because of their whole office remodel. So you guys back in the office now?
Yeah, we are. I'm actually in the room. We call this room, that's my vibe board. It's my cool new toy. But we called this room the mobile command center. So this is where, when the office remodel was going on, our leadership team and whoever else was in the office, we would all just cram in here and work. So
that's cool. What is that called? The vibe board?
Yeah, vibe board.
What is that?
They're cool. It's like a smart board, like they have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like interactive. You can pull websites up on it, and it acts just like a huge iPad. I've been nerding out on it. It's like a skill. I need to learn how to use it. There's a learning curve with it, but it's
I think
cool.
I need to come take a visit.
I think you do.
It's not that far away. It's only like 5 hours. So everything's 5 hours from me.
Yeah, I know.
for real.
Jake was gonna drive when he was coming to visit you. I was like, let's just get you a plane ticket. That's gonna be so much.
Dude, we had so much fun.
Did you? That's awesome.
Oh, it was a blast. Yeah, he came in the night before the game. We hung out, had dinner. Got up into the game. Game was a blast. Of course, they won, and then he came back home. He came back home up to the UP and hung out here for a day, and came to my house and hung out at my house. It was a great time. Like, that guy's a stud. You picked a good one.
Yeah, it was.
Shout out to
Jake. There were a lot of steps that had to happen for him to come on board, and it was, I don't know, it was one.
He told me the story behind the scenes. It was a pretty wild story.
Yeah, there was a lot of things, but you meet someone and you can just tell, like, we're going to work well together, and just, he cares so much. I mean, and I would never put someone in charge of my company that didn't have that, like, connection to the final client. Like, I think it's really easy to get lost in the business semantics and lose that, but man, he cares so much, and it helps us tremendously as an organization.
I'll be sitting down at night working, all of a sudden I go to ping, I look at my email, it's Jake working at freaking 12 o'clock at night. I'm like, there's my guy.
Yeah, he's a grinder. We've created a culture of grinders here for sure, which is what you need. It's one of our core values, GSD. For some audiences, it's get stuff done. I think for this audience, we can say get shit done.
Yeah, we can definitely.
That's in our blood. Done. Yeah, that's who we are.
Yeah, it's super cool. But yeah, so I appreciate you guys taking me to the game. Super fun.
You guys are probably bummed out because our Vikings won last night.
They did. So I think they're tied to the Lions. The Lions lost.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, Lions lost to the Bills. So I think we have the toughest division by far, and it's usually not. This year, it's tough. Anyone could win. Like, the Vikings look good, Lions look good.
It really could be anyone. I'm not as into it as the rest of the staff here. I'm not super into sports, but I know enough to know that it seems like anyone's game right now. Which is wild. For sure.
Like, I watch TV once a week. And that's a Packer game. That's about it. Well,
the Packers are like a cult following. I remember I went to I went to a wedding in Green Bay. This was a number of years ago, but it was a Saturday night wedding, and I woke up Sunday, and it was like a zombie takeover had happened of green. It was just like the whole town completely changed.
It's wild. Like you'll go, like you said, on a Saturday, you'll see people. It's busy at the mall, whatever, and then it's a home game for Packers, and like it must like double or triple. Like it holds like 80,000 people, and all 80,000 people are like in there, but people are so tailgating, like probably a couple 100,000 people at the game itself.
Yeah, it's wild. If anyone has ever had a chance to go, you should definitely go to Green Bay and witness it. It's pretty wild.
You just got to go one time, whether you're a sports fan or not, just to see it.
Yeah.
Pretty iconic. I had a couple friends fly in last year. I just went to the Kansas City game. That was fun. And then one of my really good friends just flew in from Austin. Same thing. Just went out there, checked it out. Like just wanted to see it, did a tour. It was really, really cool. So what all do you guys, we'll get into marketing next, but what all do you guys offer at NorthWing Digital?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've actually done a lot of work over the last 18 months to.
It's funny how your business changes every single year, hey?
Right. Yeah. And a lot of it depends on just what you're focusing on and what you realize you're good at. So I think the best way to describe it most simply is we have teams internally. We have a web team and a digital marketing team. So that's generally how we're structured internally. I have a team that designs, develops, and launches digital properties. And then we have a marketing team whose primary task is getting more traffic to and ROI out of those properties. So what that looks like from a service standpoint, which gets a little boring, but is necessary to break down, is really at the end of the day, what we do is web design and development. So full web projects from beginning to end. Web maintenance, which is actually our fastest growing category, which a lot of companies in our realm don't really focus on, but it's the best revenue in the world from our standpoint and from the client standpoint, because you have all this mountain of tasks that need to get done on your website. You don't have the internal capacity to do it. We take care of that on a block hour basis. And then on the marketing side, what we're primarily focused on is SEO and PPC and a blend of those to meet the client's goals. So basically concurrent SEO and search engine marketing campaigns to drive leads, drive traffic.
And then even when I brought my website over, like you guys are like, whoever did this, you guys are honest, like they did a great job. Like we don't really want to change anything. Like they did a great job. Like, and you guys said that from day one, which I appreciated that. Like, oh, that's good. You know, like they weren't bashing anyone. But where do you say most marketing companies go wrong, or agencies, I should say?
It's a good question. I would say,
because I mean, you probably hear just as many horror stories as I do, or maybe more.
Yeah, we hear a lot of horror stories. I'm trying to think what the standout item is. You know, I think that's actually even a good example in and of itself. Like a lot of companies just want to sign up as many service lines as they can. So say you have an awesome website and the priority should just be driving traffic to the website. Companies will just treat it as a sales opportunity and say, we need to rebuild your website. We need to rebrand you. We need to do all these things. And I think what a lot of companies lack and where we set ourselves apart is like prioritization of effort in terms of generating the most ROI. Like we have a finite amount of time. Where do we spend our time to generate the best outcome for you? Like, and it really ties back to our purpose. Like our purpose as a company is to help others succeed. So basically, no matter what we do, we're going to put the plan together that we feel makes the best use of our resources and your resources to help you succeed and get where you want to go. And a lot of times a web redesign is not a necessary component of that. It's just going to delay it for 6 months and you're going to end up with something just as functional as you have now, right? So why lose the 6 months?
What I also enjoyed, Kyle, is like the transparency of everything. I've worked with a lot of marketing companies. Like, okay, well, I spend this much money. Like, what did I get for it? An ad spend. Like, oh, well, I'm not sure. Like, well, how many leads we got? I don't really know. Like, I think we got to spend more money. Like, okay, and you spend more money and nothing changes. Like, well, what the hell? That didn't help.
Yeah, it's totally in our blood to be transparent. Trust through transparency is another one of our core values.
I'm just hitting the nail on the head today.
You are. It's good. I mean, you're confirming what we've discovered, you know, because we're an EOS company too. I don't know if we've chatted about that or nerded out about that. But
I know that Jake and I have for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So it's funny. Like early in my business career, I kind of thought a lot of that stuff was hogwash. I think like most of us do early on. It's like, hey, I'm fighting for survival here. I don't have time to talk about what our core values are. I gotta like pay my mortgage. But going through that process has been transformative, and probably the coolest thing about it was discovering those core values and then like hearing them echoed back constantly by our clients. So you're hitting the nail on the head, but it's even more confirmation than that because it validates all the work that we've done. But tying it back to that transparency piece specifically, outside of prioritization of channels, I would say that's number 2 or maybe even number 1 of where companies like ours go wrong, because it's just smoke and mirrors.
I could not agree more.
Yeah, it's smoke and mirrors, money here. We don't really know what we got for it. They tie it back to a billboard. Well, when you put up a billboard, you don't know how many you get off it. It's like, well, yeah, we're not putting up billboards. We can track this stuff. It may not be perfect, but we can track it. We can get a general sense of what we're getting out of it. So that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I agree with you too. And just like knowing where every dollar goes to and seeing your return on that investment. It's such a, like at any moment in time, I just pull up an app and look at it. I'm like, oh, sweet. This is what's working. This is what's not working. Let's chat about it. Cool. And then you talked about US a little bit. And so for the listeners, like when you and I started out, it was like a weekly cadence. Like I had a weekly meeting, go over everything. And then it slowly phased into a biweekly call. Cause got the initial, first 6 months out of the way, like got caught up, and now it's just checking in, see how things are at, adjusting the ad spend, adjusting the ads, things like that, working on what needs to be worked on for spring and get ready. So like just like following that cadence has been big too, because I've had marketing companies in the past, you can't even get a hold of them. Send them emails and they don't respond. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, and it's like your lifeline to new business, and you can't even get a call back about it. It's like, how does that even work? Yeah, we actually have moved to where we require at least a once a month meeting with clients. Some clients we sign up and they say, hey, we just want this to kind of run. And the second they say that, it's just a countdown to an end date because they're not engaged, because you're not really, like, kind of tying back to what I was saying earlier about the co-produced outcome. We can operate, we know generally what to do, but we can't operate in a vacuum where we don't understand how it's translating to your side or where you're trying to go. So minimally, at least once a month in terms of a touch point is what we require. And God, the performance of accounts, even with just once a month versus nothing, is completely different.
Yeah. I love marketing. Like I love it. Like I live and breathe it. And so like having my finger on the pulse at all times is, I really enjoy that part of it too. Like I know it's working, I know it's not working, and that we can adjust accordingly. I love that aspect of it too.
Oh, I do too. It's the best.
It's so much fun. And so we'll get into marketing in a minute. But I have another question that I wrote down. Where do most companies go wrong? Like that you work with or have worked with? Where do they go wrong? It makes it hard for you.
Pest control specifically, or?
Yeah, let's go with pest control service side.
The hardest thing about pest control specifically, as compared to really anything else, is the calculation that needs to happen to understand what the lifetime value is to the customer to realize that the marketing spend is worthwhile and understanding the long-term payoff. That's what's so hard. If you introduce wildlife, it can be a little bit easier because you're getting big jobs to cover the marketing costs. Like you think about like a roofing company, for example.
They spend $500, you'll get a $20,000 job.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you're strictly pest control only, you don't have those big wins to kind of cover that expense in your mind. So the biggest thing people do is they pull back too quickly because they're not seeing the return, but you're not going to get the return in 6 months. It's about a 5-year lifetime value of the customer and understanding what the return looks like over time.
Especially if they're a newer company and they haven't been marketing for a long time, they're not going to know what their LTV is at that point.
Correct. And the hardest thing about it for the new companies, and I really think there's a shift. This is something I'd love to get into. There's a big shift happening in the pest control marketing space right now where the advertising cost has gone up so tremendously because the big companies are getting so sophisticated that it's harder and harder for the small companies to be able to justify paid advertising and succeed with it.
And I think that's only going to get harder.
It's only going to get harder. It's only going to get harder.
Yeah, I've been saying that for, I'm probably even on the podcast for the last year. It's going to get harder and harder for these small companies to operate.
100%. Because there's so much consolidation happening, and that's reflected in the marketing.
But is that going to be good or bad? I don't know, because like there's roll-ups, like you said, there's roll-ups happening all across the country, acquisition after acquisition after like always some big ones. I don't know, like, is it going to be good or bad? I think in some opportunity might be really good because not everyone wants to go with these big players, you know, like there could be some opportunity in there too, you know?
And I think the way to battle against that is with grassroots marketing efforts in addition to paid. I mean, it's not realistic now. I mean, it could work, but unless you have a ton of money behind the scenes, it's not really realistic to set up a small company, single operator company now and rely only on paid advertising to generate your new business. It's a piece of the puzzle, but more so than ever, people like that have to have a more rounded marketing approach that includes heavy Google business profile optimization, massive emphasis on reviews. That's where people are getting just eaten alive. The competitor has 1,000 reviews. I have 5. It affects everything, like the ROI of any channel you're doing if you don't have the right amount of reviews. Good brand, local presence, and paid advertising, they all have to work together now more than ever.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, even you said grassroots marketing, it's the little things too, you know, like showing up in the parade. It doesn't cost anything, maybe $100 or whatever. Like just showing up locally too, like all the little places that you can. It all adds up. And like I said, people can't just rely on Facebook or Google just for your advertising. You got to be everywhere. Show up every single place.
But I do agree with you that there is opportunity there because I think there is a massive segment of customers that do not want to work with the giant enterprise level global players. Like I think there's still a huge contingent of people that want that local company. They want that local touch point, so to speak, with who they're working with. And I think if you can lean into that, in addition to having smart paid and SEO strategies, like you said, it could even bring more opportunity to those companies that do it right.
Yeah. Quick question for you, Kyle. Do you use Google more or ChatGPT more?
Google for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm more ChatGPT now.
For everything?
Yeah, for everything. It's been a shift, like for me, like over the last 6 months. Because I've probably been like, I know a lot of people are just starting to hear about it or maybe heard about it in the last 6 months, but I'm a big Patrick Bet-David fan. And I've been watching him forever. So he started talking about it, I don't know, year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. So I started playing around with it then. So I'm like 2 years into it. And I honestly barely even go to Google. So I wonder where the shift will be. There at some point.
Honestly, I'm all for it. I mean, people think that ChatGPT is a threat to our industry. I think more so it's a threat to Google. But what people don't understand is like how unsustainably we've been focused on Google for so long, you know?
But Google's been a pain in the ass, especially the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting a wake-up call because they have not diversified their revenue. Their revenue comes from people going to google.com, looking for the best search results and clicking on ads that surround those search results. That's what it depends on. So it's a huge threat to them. I think you're going to see really productive, positive changes for the user with Google because they're going to have to shift back from being so greedy with all the ads everywhere, lowering the quality of the search experience because a lot of that search share is going to start moving to ChatGPT and other AI language models like that. I'm still majority Google just because I work in it every day, but I use ChatGPT a lot. I'm by no means like a naysayer. I actually think it's going to bring positive changes across the board because it's going to diversify things.
Cool. That's good. I brought it up. Last 12 to 18 months, Google made a lot of changes too. Do you think those were for the better, worse? And they're always doing updates and stuff like that, but they've really cracked down on like licensing, like hardcore, which is not a bad thing there.
Like anything, it's a mix, right? I think on that respect, from a Google business profile standpoint, the changes they made have been really good. I mean, there has been just massive global widespread spam in Google business profiles for decades now. I mean, a decade plus. Them doing the work to tie it to physical licensing and address is smart. It's needed to happen for a long time, and it's going to be better for users because they're going to end up with getting the more legitimate companies and hiring actual companies versus fly-by-night people who are going to do whatever, but the changes that I would say are not productive have been more on the ad side, Google ad side, with the introduction of some challenging aspects of Google ads that have given companies like ours and yours, frankly, if you're running your own ads, less control over what you actually show up for. I think it's something that doesn't get a lot of credit, and it's made our jobs, frankly, a lot more difficult to make sure that we're generating quality paid traffic versus junk. We've had a few tools in our tool belt taken away through Google changes that have really made the paid landscape a lot more challenging. And that's specifically for search ads. LSAs they haven't changed as much other than how it relates to your Google business profile. But the search ad landscape's gotten a lot more difficult because of changes Google's made.
Gotcha. If you were to start a pest control company tomorrow, which I know you wouldn't, but if you were to, let's say you had a budget of $1,000 a month, where would you start marketing?
That's a really, really good question. In this order, I would start up a Google business profile literally day one. That's the first thing I would do once I got my name, is start up a Google business profile, tie it to a valid, real business address. Like if I had a choice between doing paid ads or getting a lease for a real business office to tie a Google business profile to, I would probably lease an office to tie the Google business profile to. It's so important. Google's really wising up to residential addresses. Service area businesses do not get the same amount of reach that physical address businesses do. So I would start a Google business profile, tie it to a real valid business address, and start generating as many legitimate reviews as quickly as possible to that Google business profile.
Yeah, and I've said that before, like if you're just starting out, or if you've been in business for a while, you just don't have any reviews, literally go to the next 50 services for free in exchange for a 5-star review.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the difference between 0 and 50 is frankly far bigger than the difference between 50 and 150. Just getting to that 50 mark is like you're entering the space to be able to compete. Once I did that, obviously you build a website associated with that too. Everyone knows you need a website, but I would argue for brand new company, Google business profile is more important than a website if you're going to choose one. And then if you're going to do any paid advertising, max out LSAs. That's the first thing you should do, which is Google guaranteed, the Google local service ads. It ties to your Google business profile, feeds off of the reviews that you have on that profile in terms of quality. And then there's nuances to it. I mean, it's not as simple as just flip a switch and let it run, but you can look up a few quick videos on how to optimize your Google LSA dashboard. And that's where I would point my paid advertising budget until it was maxed out and I needed to try something else.
And then as you're scaling, have a little more money in the bank, got 50 reviews, got some quick wins, where do you go from there?
But if you're already spending on LSAs, I would shift focus at that point back to a really well-built, solid website and start doing organic search work to it.
Is SEO super important still?
Yeah, for sure. People say it's not, but it is. It's more weighted towards Google business profile than it was 5 years ago. Like Google business profile has become more important in that realm, but people call it old school. I don't really care. Like having geographically focused landing pages on a really well optimized site that show up for pest control company plus city near me, still generate tons of traffic, tons of new business. It's a long road. I mean, it's not something you want to max out your budget on in the short term because it's not going to pay off for a year or two. But I don't know. It's still so important.
What do you think about videos on your landing page or videos on your service page? and a specific video for each service?
I think people will argue this 6 ways to Sunday. I don't believe it has direct impact on your search rankings. I don't think there's a piece in algorithm that says if a page has a video on it, it will rank above a page that doesn't. But I do think it's part of that ecosystem, and it helps first and foremost keep the user happy. Like, it's a massive factor to have that on a page. When someone gets to a page, they're going to stick around longer. So I think there are benefits to that outside of simply making a better impact on users, because the longer users stay on your site and interact with it, the better your site's going to perform overall. So the short answer is I think that's always a good move.
I like that. What is your thoughts on social media, video? Let's go YouTube, TikTok. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, you're the king of that, right? So
that's what they say. I don't know.
That's what they say. Huge factor. More of that grassroots component. It's not as much what NorthWing is focused on, and for the simple fact is, and why we don't offer that type of service is, I firmly believe that service is always done best with more of an in-house model. I mean, you have direct access to the content. You have someone right there with a camera. You can outsource it to a point, but it's not going to have the same effect. If you engage in that and dedicate to it at anywhere near the capacity that you specifically have, it's going to pay massive dividends over the long run. I mean, I know the opportunities you've enjoyed off of it. I just think it's something you have to really dedicate to, do it smart and do it right. And I wouldn't sit there and think there's a magical agency out there where that can just give you a turnkey system to do that. I really think that's something that's got to be built from within.
For sure. And like, especially working with editors, like I've worked with the same editor since basically day one. And she's on here, so she could probably tell me, but they have like your whole backlog. Like that basically they work with me since day one. Like, oh yeah, I remember this piece that I have this time. Like I could go back and grab that piece and use it for there. Like they just know. I'm assuming. Maybe Sofia, shake your head yes or no if you agree. She agrees. Yeah,
we got it.
There you go. Yeah, got it on. So like they just know your whole backlog and they go through and just steal content like from a long time ago that they can rework today. That's a lot of people don't understand. Like it's hard to make content in the winter here because it's so cold, unless you can do it indoors. So we just make double the content. We have so much B-roll throughout the whole year that we can just use all the rest of it throughout the winter to keep posting. So just get the content while you can, limited time. Well, here anyway. I had to fly to Florida last week just to get content.
Hey, that's not the worst thing to have to do with how it's been here.
Yeah.
No, I think it's huge. I think it's another piece of the puzzle. It's another slice of the marketing pie. But if you can do that well, in addition to what we do well, the results skyrocket beyond what you can just, go out and pay for and generate in terms of traffic.
Yeah. Outside of everything we talked about, is there anything else that you'd add to that marketing funnel? Like top of funnel stuff that you would.
Nextdoor has been huge for a lot of companies we work with that are in the markets where it applies.
And some markets are good for us, and some are garbage.
Some are good, some are garbage, which is funny. That is another one that I would look at. I wouldn't make it the primary cornerstone of your strategy, but if you haven't thought about it, and especially for those smaller, fast-growing companies, if you're in a market where Nextdoor has a large presence, I would definitely focus some grassroots efforts there for sure.
Yeah, I don't think that we've talked about Nextdoor in the podcast ever, to be honest with you.
Probably not. It gets totally pushed by the wayside, and I don't necessarily know why, but yeah, it's huge. Like in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, it must be like one of the Nextdoor hubs of the universe. Like it's absolutely massive here. Whereas other markets we look into and do a little market research for a client, we're like, it's dead. There's nothing going on here with Nextdoor.
Do you guys do a lot of Nextdoor for your clients?
We do in the markets that it fits with. I would say more so on a consultative capacity because a lot of that is managed well in-house too.
Yeah, actually, funny because I have a course that I show people how to use it. It's not hard, but people just don't know how to use it.
Yeah, they just don't know how to use it. So yeah, we've done a lot of training sessions and kind of walk people through. And
I always forget about the Nextdoor. Like we've literally never talked about it on here.
Yeah, no, but it's huge.
I feel like they've come a long way, even in like the last 24 months.
They've come a long way. They need to get their advertising figured out. Once their advertising is garbage. Once they get that figured out, that it's just going to explode. And I think that could be if they had a really good, well thought out advertising system within Nextdoor, it would be probably nearly tied with LSAs, where I would tell someone early on to put their money.
That's awesome. Glad we brought that up. Cool. Thank you for that. Offline marketing besides video, anything that grassroots that you like that you've heard is working well from other clients, like maybe it's door hangers, maybe it's every door direct mail, anything like that that's outside the box that you've heard anyone using different?
I like the door hangers. This might be my first ever podcast shout out, but there's a company local to us called Paperboy Marketing that I have a good relationship with the owner, and they do they do where they actually go stick it on the door or put it in a mailbox. I think that there is a lot of sense to that, especially when you can get hyper localized to exactly where you want to be. I think that works well. Direct mail, even if the messaging's right and you're focused on the right areas,
right? So if you think of like a market, you think of like even one of my markets where it's a super old market. Everyone's a little bit older. They love coupons, like they still do. So they get that thing in the mail, and as long as you send it at the right time, it works very, very well. And then there's other markets, kind of the same thing, a little bit younger, nothing.
But again, like just because we have our niche and what we do, I think I have a more open mind to other marketing initiatives than a lot of people who are in my position and all the type of company that I do. Like that stuff works if you do it right.
Yeah. And like, then if you tie it all together, right?
Yep.
And so like people are like, well, we can't really get a really good return on it or know what the return is. Like, it's really not that hard to figure out.
No, it's not.
Pretty easy. Especially if you figure out how to do it yourself. And there's other companies that do a really good job at sending them out for you and tracking. But you can do it all yourself too for damn near free, other than paying the post office.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you have something like CallRail, you just spin up another number and you can filter all right there. Yeah.
So it's really not that hard. Yeah, CallRail. People who don't know what CallRail is, you and I do, but for the listener, explain what CallRail is.
Yeah, so CallRail is, there's a few other companies that are in the space now, but what I would call the industry leader call tracking software. It's something that we use almost exclusively at NorthWing. Basically gives you the opportunity to create a whole suite of numbers that forward to your number that automatically switch out by source. So if it's Google Ads click, it'll show one number. If it's SEO click, it'll show another number. You can spin up a mailer and do a number for it. And then you have basically a centralized phone call dashboard that you can filter by source to understand where all of your leads are coming from, what the quality is, and you can thumbs up, thumbs down right in there. It's super cool.
That's awesome. What about going back to like the pest control companies specifically? Because you work with a lot of them are probably good. But what about them tracking their sources on the inside? Is that better frustration for you guys at all?
Yeah, I would say, I think it's a general frustration. I've always had the idea to create some type of centralized inbound lead dashboard where it's just really easy to filter. It's something I've talked with a lot of people in the industry about. I know there's different solutions that serve different purposes, but I think I actually sympathize with the teams that we work with and the teams in the industry, because there's not a great turnkey solution to just consolidate all the leads in one place and mark where they came from. You have a technology here that your digital company's working with. You have a technology here that, it's kind of all over the place. So I think figuring out the right system to categorize that properly internally and track it is of the utmost importance. But I sympathize with people because I know what a lift that can be, because there's not a great turnkey solution to do that. And I'm sure people will chime in on here and be like, oh, this does everything you're talking about, or that does everything you're talking about. I have not found one yet that we love that truly.
Hopefully we get a bunch of comments.
Yeah, I know.
Say, so hey, this is what's working. Yeah. Perfect.
And to be clear, there are softwares out there that do this. It's just a software that ties in with absolutely everything you need to do and makes that easier for people. I think there's a huge appetite in the industry for.
Yeah, I think the shift over the last couple of years with open API has been a big win for everyone across the industries too. I mean, everyone in general. Because there's some CRMs out there that still don't have an open API, that don't integrate. They're losing revenue because people are switching to people that do.
Yeah, for sure.
Not that this is my world, but I see the change happening and I really like it.
For sure. I know we've had some good success. Gorilla Desk has a function like this that works well. We're just
Chris, if you're listening, you're a G.
Yeah, he's such a G. So we've rolled that out for a few people, and it's really good. It's a big step in the right direction for that.
I think I need to call him to get him back on the podcast. He's been about a year.
We could do a team episode. I'll join too. He's smart.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And it didn't take me long to figure it out. And like we were talking, we actually met at Seth's event. Matt introduced us. And we started chatting. And next thing you know, it's like we're talking for 3 or 4 hours at this point. And then now he's become one of my good friends. He's sponsored the podcast. Like he's an absolute G. But I believe in his product, but I believe in him more than anything. Like he is so smart.
Yeah, he's so smart.
Really cool. So how did you get mixed up with Seth? Where did that come about? Is that through Matt?
Yeah, Matt with Abracadabra was our first entry point into this industry all those years ago. We sat next to each other. Really one of the places where I got my start. Yep, homegrown hustle.
Giving all kinds of shout outs today.
Yeah, we are. 6-7 years ago, we sat at a networking event, which is one of the places that my business started to grow. I'm an in-person networking guy. I love meeting people. And saw this guy walk in, and he sat down next to me, and he just bought his father-in-law's pest control company that was tiny at the time. And I still remember the exact words. He looked at me and said, "Do you do like SEO and stuff?" And the rest is history. So it turned out that we did do SEO and stuff, and here we are.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
We built an awesome relationship with Matt. That's one of the reasons that I fell in love with the industry, is watching what he's done with that company and grow it from the point it was at, and being an integral part of that has just been really cool. Like I sort of feel like Matt and I cracked the code all those years ago, and here we are. Things have changed a lot, but I mean, what he's taken that from and to is phenomenal. It's incredible.
Yeah, I know we're running out of time. We have a lot of questions, but I'll try to end with a few. What are some of the biggest changes that you have seen in the past few years, and what do you see another change happening?
The massive shift of paid spend towards LSA has been wild.
From ad spend to LSA, is that what you said?
Yeah, what you would have traditionally spent on pay-per-click 5 years ago and what you would spend on that compared to LSA now has changed seismically. I mean, it's a massive shift towards LSA to generate ROI. And a lot of the reasons for that is the changes Google's made on the pay-per-click side that just make it so much more difficult than it used to be. It can still work, but it requires big budgets, a lot more testing, long-term effort to get a really well-oiled campaign. SEO has gotten far more competitive. No secret there. It's not a day goes by where we'll get less competitive. But I think Matt's campaign from then till today, the big change would be that we would have started with LSA versus pay-per-click, just because that landscape has changed so much.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Over the next 3 to 5 years, Kyle, what's NorthWing Digital going to look like?
NorthWing specifically as a business?
Yeah.
We're going to triple in size at least. We're going to grow our presence in this industry along with many others, and honestly, not chase the shiny things and just keep doing what we're doing now, but do it at a larger scale and do it better.
Yeah, that's the way they always ask me. I'm like, yeah. They asked me the question, man, pretty much the same boring shit that we're doing now, just more of it.
That's how you grow. I mean, you just keep adding in new stuff, and it's exciting, but it stifles you. We have our focuses that we know we're good at, and we built the team now to scale it. So we're going to, if something new comes along that we have to focus on, we will, but we're going to just maximize what we're focused on now. We have the team and infrastructure to do it.
Anything new that you see coming down the pipeline other than AI that'll change the game?
AI is going to change the game massively, but it's not going to happen as quickly as people think, and you're going to have to cautiously approach how to use it and not shift everything right away. But that's the big one. I mean, that's something we'll certainly have to grow into, but I see it more as influencing how we approach what we do now versus replacing or totally changing what we do now. I think it's just it's going to alter the execution and how we do it.
Are you much of a reader?
Yeah.
Give me your top couple books that you enjoy, or even ones that you read recently.
I would encourage anyone. I'm going to sound like a total fanboy, but the whole suite of Traction EOS books has been incredible for me personally and my business.
That and Traction and Rocket Fuel are my two favorite books.
Yep, 100%. I always thought it was a gimmick, but then I got into it. I was like, this is no gimmick. 10X is easier than 2X. Life-changing book.
That's such a good book. I think you're the second person who's mentioned that last 2 weeks. That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a life-changing, literally a life-changing book as a business owner.
It's one of those books that I couldn't put down.
I couldn't either. I was like,
I think it was gone 2 or 3 hours. I'm like, holy crap, that was good.
It's the only time I've ever been upset that my plane was landing because I was so wired into it and I knew I had to go do something. And then we've really organizationally, but myself as well, Lencioni, his whole series. I mean, it's massive. Patrick Lencioni.
Yeah, the 5 functions of a team.
Yeah, and the four obsessions of extraordinary executives is phenomenal. It really helps you understand that as a CEO, as a leader, it's not about being a rock star at any one specific thing and outshining your team. It's literally at that point becomes about setting up everything properly and sitting back and letting the organization run, which I think is where a lot of people get hung up. A lot of people get hung up there, and that book helps tremendously.
Yeah, just go find the talent that's better than you are, because yes, we think we're better at everything, but there's people who are way better at us at their job, at what they do. Give them their job and let them run with it.
Don't step on it from what they're doing. Just let them do it. And then The 1 Minute Manager too. That's a great book.
Maybe I've read that one, but maybe I haven't written that one down too.
It's a quick read. It's a short book, but I think it's short for a purpose, because I don't want to blow the whole thing, but the whole concept of the book is that your job as a manager is not to sit alongside someone and do their job with them. It's to set them up for success and then back away. So similar to the 4 obsessions, but in a very succinct, story-based format. It's super good.
For sure. Man, these podcasts go by so fast. We're an hour and a half in. I feel like we're just getting rolling. I do this every time. Sophia's just laughing because she knows how I am. Last question for you. What are you most proud of, Kyle?
It's kind of funny. I have a little card in my office, and it looks like nothing. It just came with when we put our merch out. I don't even know who in my company wrote it, but it just says, "From your NorthWing team, thank you for being a great leader." And I no one knows that I kept it. I guess they do now, but I cherish that little card more than anything, because I mean, hey, they could just be saying that and kissing my ass, who knows? But even to see that and know you at least have done something to impact to a level where people feel that way about you. I
can tell you get emotional talking about it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's just cool. And I think we all kind of, like we said, wonder how the hell we got here, but building up the people around you is the key part of it. That's the biggest part.
I agree. That's cool. Well, man, we could talk for the next couple hours. We're going to have to do this again. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate everything you guys have done for us as a business. I'm excited to see what you guys do in the next couple of years. It's going to be fun to watch.
I'm excited to see what you guys are going to do in the next couple of years.
It's going to be fun, man.
Let's grow together. That's how it works best. It's a grind.
Been quite the ride the last few years, for sure.
Yeah, it has. Pete's going to have to shave his beard at some point here soon.
He will soon.
We have, for the listeners who don't know, we have a running bet with Pest Badger that if they hit a certain revenue point, one of our employees has to shave his beard. So I don't know if he knew what he was getting into when he made that bet.
He didn't, but he does. I think he does now. Awesome, man. Well, good chatting with you.
You too, man. Let's do this again soon.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. We don't charge any money for the show, obviously, but the podcast isn't free. You can pay for the podcast by sharing it with your friends and your family. So please like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. These things make a huge difference for us. If you have any specific questions you want answered about the business or your life by me or my guests, send an email to info@pestcontrolmillionaire.com. And if you want to get in touch with me about any personal business coaching, check out our website at www.pestcontrolmillionaire.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys again on the next one.